You're listening to the More Than the Music podcast, episode 12, featuring Natalie Grant.
I had a vocal cord rupture several years ago where my vocal cord was literally bleeding while I was wondering if I would ever actually get my voice back. And I was going through this intense therapy and couldn't speak or hum or whistle or anything for 30 days. I went on a trip to India that forever changed my life. And I couldn't say a word. I couldn't speak about it. I couldn't talk about it. All I could do was listen. And I really discovered my true calling during that time. And I think sometimes in the silence is where we learn the most.
You're about to hear how Natalie Grant overcame losing her first 2 record deals, what she discovered after being silent for a month after vocal surgery, how she learned to let it go and trust God more while her daughter was in ICU, and how their family's random 30-second dance parties helped them relieve stress. I'm Justin Paul along with Natalie Grant, and we're going to talk about a lot more than just the music.
More Than the Music is hosted by Justin Paul, a touring musician turned national radio personality who loves the dramatic, humorous, sometimes tragic, and often inspiring story behind the songs from your favorite artists. You can connect with the show at wayfm.com/Justin. Now here's your host, Justin Paul.
I'm so thrilled to be joined by Miss Natalie Grant. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Take me back to the beginning and how this whole thing got started, where it began for Natalie Grant.
You know, I was born and raised in Seattle, which is not exactly the hotbed of Christian anything, but I was born into a Christian family and raised in the church and loved to sing. And, you know, from the time I was a little girl, my mom says before I could even pronounce my words properly at 2 years of age, I'd sing harmony to any song that I heard. So I think it was just born into me. But I didn't plan on being a professional singer. And that seemed just so unrealistic for a kid from Seattle. So I went to college and studied elementary education. I thought I was going to be a first grade school teacher. Side note, I homeschooled my kids for 1 year. That is so not my calling in life. Just let's all thank God for a moment I did not become a teacher. But in college, I was in my 3rd year and I was singing a ton in my church and loving that, loved serving in the local church. I love the local church. A group that had been around for, goodness, 25 years. They were called Truth. They came through my home church and I went, oh, that'd be cool to audition for them and go do for a year, take a year off from school and then come back and finish my last year. I never came back. I went and did that for 2 years. And it was really that time on the road, singing in a group. We were the crew. We were the cleaning crew. We did it all. It was like boot camp, but it was what God used to say, hey, this is what I have for you. So I moved to Nashville. I'm making this sound really easy. 9 months later, I got a record deal, but it wasn't easy. That was, goodness, back in 1997 is when I got my first deal. And my first record came out in 99 on a record company that after my first song went to radio, the record company went out of business. And I was like, what now? And then I got a second record deal and I put out another record and another song went to radio and then that record company went out of business.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, okay,
label
I see
killer,
a pattern
Natalie
that
Grant.
I do not like. But the third time was the charm. I'm still with that same label. And, you know, I'd done it for several years. And in 2005, I had a record come out called Awaken that had a song on it called Held. And that was what people would call I don't know what you say that, but you're kind of
career
breakthrough.
Song, maybe,
it's a career song.
Yeah.
That really kind of was up to that point, maybe my family and a few friends had bought my records. And then it kind of blew up and I'm grateful. I used to sing into a hairbrush, into my stuffed animals. And, you know, almost 2 decades later, I'm still doing it, which is pretty cool.
Now, would you tell your kids if they're wanting to be a singer to maybe just give up college and keep on going? Now, you're a mom
you
now.
Gotta ask that question.
Would you be there doing the same thing that you were doing?
Oh, you know, we would definitely encourage our girls and they're all very musical. So I feel one of them for sure is going to do that. We might encourage them to go to a little bit of university, but at the same time, I'm a plan A person all the way. And it's harder to say that now that I'm a parent, but it's like if you've got a dream, you have to go plan A or go home. Because if you have a plan B, you'll only ever do your plan B. You'll never do your plan A. So I'm sure I'm going to be tested with that when my daughter says, hey, I'm going to quit school, but hopefully I'll live by what I've said.
I started in radio when I was in high school and just knew after a couple of years in it that I was just going to do this as a career. Right. And my dad still to this day, son, when are you going to go to college?
You're like, Dad,
I'm almost 30.
Give up the dream, Dad. Give
seriously,
up the dream.
Come on. I've been doing radio for 13 years now.
Exactly. And a conversation for another day, but university is so expensive. And you're like, listen, if you can do this without... I've had more training that I never got in college to do what I do through the local church. So,
Speaking of your family, your 3 girls are already so musically talented. I love the adorable Instagram videos that you post of your kids and like just the music that fills your home. You're already raising them up to be a great singer.
Thank you. Well, my husband is really honestly the star of the family because he's an amazing songwriter and producer. And we have a studio in our home. So from the time they were just little, they can pop in the studio. And this record, they were a part of every aspect of it. They'd sit and listen to me record, and I try out my songs on them. And so they're a part of it. I can't imagine that it's not in them. But now to see them at so young start to express not just singing ability, but they are writing songs. My one daughter's only 9 years old. She just wrote an entire song.
Oh my goodness.
So it's been really special.
The one you posted on Instagram of your kids singing in the backseat to your song just was like...
It's the best. And she
so
sings it
adorable.
at the top of her lungs. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a lot of things wrong in this life, but I've done something right because she is singing her heart out to my own song. It was an awesome mom moment.
Now, you mentioned your husband, Bernie Herms, an incredible Christian producer, songwriter. Do you get first dibs on the songs being the wife?
It's really funny that you asked that because right now he's working on the next Danny Gokey record, and he gave him a song, and I was like, you remember I wanted that song, right? And he was like, oh, no. I said, it's all right. Danny can have it. But, a lot of the songs we write together for the record, and it's so special that with the person that I'm spending my life with, that we get to write songs together. I think it's one of the reasons I actually developed as a songwriter because I had a safe place to share my ideas. Songwriting is so scary because you're basically burying your soul and then asking people to say whether or not they like your soul. And it's really like, it's scary. And so to have somebody that I trust with all of my heart to bounce my ideas off of, I think it really helped me become more confident in my songwriting.
Now, when you're writing a song and you're like, no, this is the idea, and Bernie's like, no, this is the idea, who wins?
I think I'd like to say that we're pretty good at just coming to solutions in a calm way. However, the songwriting we don't fight over as much, but when we're actually recording the vocals and he's like, my husband is, anyone who knows him will say, he is the nicest human being in the world. And sometimes you want to punch the nice right out of a person where they're literally like, that was so great. Let's just sing it one more time. And then 23 times later, that was so great. Let's
one
just
more
sing
time.
it. I'm like, if it was so great, why do I need to do it one more time? So we might get a little tense when we're doing vocals.
Well, you can't put any auto-tune on that Natalie Grant voice, so we got to nail it, right?
I don't allow auto-tune. I'm actually being serious. He knows that's a real hot button for me.
I'm sure you don't need it, that's for sure.
You're sweet.
Well, you are super busy with family and music and touring, and how do you balance all that stuff? I think I read once on Instagram that you were just grateful to be home doing laundry for a couple of days.
Right? It's amazing how the mundane things of life become actually special and therapeutic. I have never found the recipe for balance. So I get asked that probably more than any other question from women who, they might not be touring, but a lot of women are working outside their home these days, and they're also trying to be the best mom and wife they can be. And especially, there's a lot of single moms who are having to work. I don't know the recipe for balance. I know this. There's no time limit I'm going to tell you have to spend with Jesus, but spend time with Jesus. First and foremost, before your feet hit the floor, even if your child is just whimpering in their bed and saying, come get me, they can wait. They're safe. They're fine. They're in their bed. Take a moment. Spend time with Jesus. And then take a moment every day and do something for yourself. And I was raised with this idea that self-care, right? Taking care of yourself was selfish. That the more you were serving somebody else, the better wife and mom, like the women, I think especially feel like they have to be the servant of all. And that's because God naturally gifted us to kind of take care of other people. He put that nurturing spirit in women. But self-care is not selfish. It's actually smart. And it makes you a better wife and a better mom and a better human being and a better Christian. And I really have learned that even if it's just 5 minutes taking a walk around the block or just doing something, the Bible says love others as you love yourself. And I think that a lot of us actually struggle with loving ourselves. And I've really learned in the last year how to love and accept myself. And it's made all the difference in the world with how I am a wife and a mom. As far as balance, the Bible says we're running a race. And I've never met anybody who runs a race that's not tired. So
True.
If you're looking to be like easy, you're not running after what God calls us all to run after. So you're going to be tired. But when you are close to Jesus, you'll have a peace of your soul, right? You'll have deep rest even though you're exhausted. And he has a grace on my life to do what I am called to do. He has a grace on your life to do what you're called to do. And I think as long as we just are staying in our lane and running the race that he's called us to race instead of trying to run somebody else's, we'll be just fine.
Yeah. If there is a song on this album to get your day started, it's this track number 2, Good Day. Like, this is just a fun song. It's just, it gets your day going. Right?
Yeah, I wrote this song because in my house, we do something called 30-second dance parties. And we were kind of running out of songs to do it to. And I just challenge anyone who's having a bad day, a stressful day, a sad day, a hard day, a mad day, dance for 30 seconds. Dance like there's no tomorrow. Dance like an absolute fool and see if you're not smiling by the end of those 30 seconds. And I am going to go as far as to say I don't know anybody who danced for 30 seconds and not at least smile a little bit.
Yeah.
So I really did actually write this song for our 30-second dance parties. And I hear that it's helping a whole lot of other people have those same kind of dance parties. I'm happy about that.
Is this just like where everybody's at home and you just automatically stop and go, okay, 30-second dance party? Or do you have like a schedule where it's...
Oh, no, there's no schedule. It's whenever you feel the tension.
Okay.
We
All
say,
right.
I think it's time for a 30-second dance party. And that might be at a stoplight, which we've known to do. So if you look over and there's a crazy family dancing in their car, it just might be us.
It's the Grant family.
Yes,
Crank up Good
crank it
Day
up.
and
Here we
dance
go.
along with them.
I'm gonna dance to the beat of amazing grace. Gonna hold to the promise that you made me. And I know whatever's gonna come my way, you're here with me. And it's gonna be a good day because you're gone. It's gonna be a good day because you're gone.
Another song on this album that I know is very special to you is the song King of the World. I think this is a song for the control freaks like me. It sounds like
Yes.
from what I've read a couple places too, that might be the way you are
yes.
as well.
Yes, I'm very type A, and I like to control the outcome and feel like if I do this, I can control the outcome. And it actually gives us a false sense of control anyway, because we really aren't in control. And I think that oftentimes in my own life, not just in my way I parent, in the way I live my life, but in my walk with Christ as well, I think oftentimes I feel like I'm the one that's leading it. And learning the art of letting go. Elsa's way smarter than we gave her credit for because, let it go is about as smart as you can get. And that art of just like, I'm pretty white-knuckled with a lot of issues in my life. I hold tightly to the things that are working, and I hold tightly to hurt, and I hold tightly to things that I want to let go of. And just learning just to even loosen your grip a little bit and remembering who's in control after all.
I'm the type of person that I have a hard time giving stuff up. I have a hard time putting things in God's hands because I feel like if I can't accomplish it, then it can't be accomplished. I'm kind of like, I'm driven for that
Yes.
in a way, for that success, just getting to the goal.
Yes.
But sometimes you can't get to the goal without relinquishing control.
Yeah, and I think sometimes to be reminded that even when you get to the goal, it really had very little to do with you anyway.
Exactly.
And I think that we find a false sense of security when something's working, and we forget, okay, it's not just in the bad, because I oftentimes find that in the bad is when we actually run to God. It's in the good that we have a hard time remembering, oh, that's right. He's king of this moment. As much as he's king of when I'm in the storm, he's also king of when I'm on the mountaintop. And it's learning that through it all, he's a good father, his plans are perfect, and he's in control, and I'm not. He's
Yeah.
God and I am not.
When did I forget that you've always been the king of the world? Try to take life back right out of the hands of the king of the world. How could I make you so small when you're the one who holds it all? When did I forget you've always been the king of the world?
Now, recently, one of your daughters was in the hospital for a while. As a mom, as a parent, not being able to do anything about that, not having any control over that, what was that like for you?
Oh, it was terrifying. It was so terrifying. And, you feel helpless, especially because I'm a fixer.
Yeah.
So you just want to fix everything. And I even remember, I would just try to talk to the doctors. And I really had to get to the point where I was like, Natalie, take a deep breath. You've not been to medical school. You do not know better than they know. But at the same time, I remember there was one particular morning, she was in the ICU for about 6 days, a really bad asthma attack. And I remember walking the halls of the hospital and thinking, oh my word, there are children here who are never going to go home. it was just such a somber moment for me to realize, okay, you can't control this. All you can do is pray and trust. And I also had a whole lot of people praying for her as well.
Sure.
On social media. It was the outpouring of love and concern was pretty amazing.
Now, this was an asthma issue. Is she better now? How's that progressing?
She still has asthma. She had RSV and pneumonia, and that is what brought on her asthma attack. And, honestly, she'd had a few asthma attacks here and there, but we'd never really been informed how serious asthma is. I mean, it kills a lot of people a year. And I had no idea. And especially children, they're strong, so they'll keep going till all of a sudden they just can't. Mm-hmm. And that's really what happened with her. She was like, I was like, oh, she doesn't seem that sick. I hate saying that because I try to be a mom who's so in tune with my kids. But I just kept looking at her like, well, she doesn't seem that sick. It's because, kids, they mask their symptoms. And then all of a sudden she just couldn't breathe. And we know a lot more about asthma now.
Yeah. You've kind of become an advocate for this awareness of asthma too recently, right?
Yeah. It's been amazing. We posted on Facebook just a picture and on Instagram, just a picture that said, hey, my little girl's in the hospital. Will you pray? And that ended up reaching over 13 million people. It was the amount of people that shared it, and then they shared it with their people, and their people shared it with their people. It was so overwhelming. But what happened is that the Asthma Association of America saw it, and they were like, okay, can you guys come to DC and talk about this? And that's really what also helped me. I didn't know 24 million Americans have asthma and how many children especially die from asthma. So it was cool for me to get to go to DC and talk about it. But who it was really cool was I got to take my daughter and teaching her how you can make good from any situation, any ashes God can bring beauty from. And for her at 9 years of age to feel like, oh, I can actually use this to tell my story that can actually help somebody else was a pretty cool opportunity.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. You're writing children's books too. Like you're ministering to.
I'm not doing enough, so I figured I'd throw that in there.
One more thing to do. Not only have you written your own book, but now you're writing children's books, and I mean you're advocating for so many things. You're a busy woman.
Well, you got to make the most of every moment. But more than that, I feel like that particular opportunity, I'm always trying to find a way to include my kids in what I'm doing because it's really easy. They come with me when I tour sometimes, and sometimes they don't. It's really hard to be away from them. It's really hard for our family to be separated. But I always try to say, this is not mommy's gig. This is our gig. If God's called mommy to it, he's called us to it because he's called me to be your mommy. We've always tried to make it a family thing. And I feel like this particular thing, they had just become chapter book readers. I have twins that are 9. And last year they had just started reading chapter books. And so we were looking for great books and they were really bored with a lot of what was out there. And so we actually wrote these together. Like every title my children chose, the content, the books about singing, mom, Gloria Glimmer, and her 3 little girls that go on tour with her. And so it wasn't very hard to reach for the content, but it was a fun project for us to do as a family.
When you're bored with every other book, just write your own. Just write your own book.
That's one way to do it, I guess.
Glimmer Girls is the name of it.
Yes.
Will there be more in the series coming soon?
Yeah. The first 2 books came out already, and then book 3 comes out in August, and book 4, I believe, comes out in January. So
you did a TV shooting at a local station here, and I play drums for a local guy here, and you were filming before us, and we're like, we're going to have to follow Natalie Grant. Are you serious? And it was actually when you got done, you were like, oh, she just did the children's books. We don't have to follow. We don't have to follow her singing because there's no way we could have done that.
No.
It was like actually the one time we were glad Natalie Grant didn't sing.
Sure, she didn't sing. Well, that's sweet, but no. I was just there to talk about the books.
Yeah. Well, you have another book release coming out in September too. I read somewhere. What is this book about?
It's called Finding Your Voice, and I think that one of the unique platforms that God's given me over the last few years is my music, I feel like opened the door, but the way I'm transparent with my story and my struggles, it's just really opened this platform to just so many women who, for whatever reason, I'm like, I hope they don't have misplaced trust, but they trust me and they feel like I'm their friend. And that was always a prayer of mine. I don't know. I think it's a whole conversation for another day, how we've built this platform in Christendom of these people who are up here and everybody else who's down here.
Sure.
No, we're all just Christ followers, all moving in the same direction and all have our own unique story, but moving towards a common goal. And so for me, I wanted to have that platform where people looked at me as their friend, not a fan, but more like, oh, I know this girl. This girl is like me, and we have similar struggles. And that really has happened. And so I think the book was birthed out of that desire and all the things I've heard from women of, okay, I have this dream. How do I live it out? I have this calling. How do I live it out? I feel like I'm inadequate. How do I find that strength to be who it is that God's called me to be? And so the book is called Finding Your Voice, helping every woman find her God-given passion and how to live it out loud. And I'm really excited. I tell a lot of stories of how I lost my literal voice. I had a vocal cord rupture several years ago where my vocal cord was literally bleeding. And
Wow.
while I was wondering if I would ever actually get my voice back, and I was going through this intense therapy and couldn't speak or hum or whistle or anything for 30 days, I went on a trip to India that forever changed my life. And I couldn't say a word. I couldn't speak about it. I couldn't talk about it. All I could do was listen. And I really discovered my true calling during that time. And I think sometimes in the silence is where we learn the most.
Yeah. Did you feel like in that moment that maybe the singing career was over? Did you have faith that God would give it back?
No, I had fear.
Yeah.
I had a ton of fear. And I actually had to learn to let it go. And that's part of what I talk about in the book is remembering that God is good and trusting him before the answer comes, before the miracle comes, before you know how it's going to pan out, knowing that he is God and knowing that he is good and faithful before the answer ever comes.
You've been empowering women through this Dare to Be movement too. I'm guessing some of that's kind of intertwined with this book release.
Absolutely.
But Dare to Be, talk about a little bit about that because there was a movie and then there's conferences. There's a lot of stuff happening here too.
Well, I started it with my best friend who's from England. She's a Bible teacher named Charlotte Gamble, who also writes books and just an incredible Bible teacher. And we became friends in kind of a miraculous way about 11 years ago. And about 3 or 4 years into our friendship, we kind of were like, okay, I don't think God just brought our lives together so that we could go on vacation together. Kind of a similar stage in life, trying to raise our kids, live out our calling, do ministry. How do we do all of this? Feeling inadequate, the insecurities we face. And we're both a part of a lot of conferences, so we weren't looking to try to replace anything. We felt like the uniqueness of our friendship and our stage in life, our honesty, and our God-given talents together would make something very unique. It's a one-night event, and that the entire goal is just to remind women that they are who God says that they are, not what culture's telling them or broken relationships told them or their own insecurities tell them. But if they could believe that they are who God says that they are, how would that change their life? And it started as conferences, and then somebody wanted to make it into a movie, and it's been really cool to watch it grow over the last few years.
Yeah, it seems like, I don't want to make any assumptions, but it seems like there is this constant war on women to look this way, be this way, act this way. This is what you're supposed to be. But I feel like you speaking towards this and being the voice for this just kind of says, no, this is who God says you are.
Well, I think that's what's so important. And it's not because I had it all figured out. It's because that's my own struggle with insecurities and feeling not enough and feeling like I have to live. And especially as a Christian, it's funny, the enemy is very sneaky. And a lot of times where I felt the most inadequate was actually as a believer. Because in church, a lot of times, I think we feel like there's this pressure to be a good enough Christian. And then you add to it a stage and a microphone, and then you've got to have all the right answers, and you got to be all in tune with Jesus, and, you know, have all the right scriptures memorized. And I really feel like discovering that I am who God says that I am, and he is who he says that he is, and resting in that truth. And then finding power in your own story. It's brought a lot of freedom to myself and hopefully bringing freedom to others.
Yeah, this song Clean is kind of paints that picture too, because you simply say, here are my dirty rags, but you see them as clean.
This whole record was kind of a very different creative process than any other record I've made before, because usually I take about 18 months to make a record. We made this one in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And everything was just,
That's a big difference.
Huge. It just poured out. I felt really compelled to write these songs. And Clean really came about after just a conversation with a dear friend who trusted me with her story of childhood abuse. And she'd never told anybody the story before. And I just remember just through crying with her and praying with her and reading scripture and her talking about just how dirty it was. It was just too dirty to bring to the light. And she left my house that day, and literally I just kept walking up and down my halls going, but there's nothing too dirty. And I wrote the song in about 20 minutes. And I don't mean for this to sound funny, but I honestly feel like I was just holding the pen. I really feel like this was a message that God wanted to sing over his people, not just for those who don't know him, but for those who actually know him but still feel so less than. So there's something in their past that they just can't shake. It was cool to watch this and to watch what this song has done for so many people, in particular one that just stands out in my mind. At a Dare to Be conference, we have an old school altar call at the end, which I actually really love about it. And we see hundreds of women every night give their life to Jesus. And this one girl came forward and she had a little thing that just wrote, "I am enough" on it, that she was literally holding, and I'm singing clean. She ended up sending me a private Facebook message, and I don't always see them all, but I saw hers, and she said she was actually killing herself. That night, she had already had it all planned out. Her cousin showed up at her door and would not leave her alone, said, "You are coming to this conference with me. You are coming to this conference with me. You are coming
Wow.
to." She was like, "I don't want to go. I don't want to go." And she decided to come, and she said, "You told me that no matter what had been in my life, there was nothing too dirty, that he couldn't redeem and make worthy." And she said, "I mean, my life's forever changed." And you just go, "Ugh, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
That's why I leave my kids. That's why I keep at it," because what we're doing isn't just another song. It's actually can make a difference in someone's eternity. And I feel like this song is one of those. I hope I go on to write great songs, but I really do. I say all the time, I pray that I'm remembered for this one when it's all said and done.
When you hear this song, you can hear the emotion in the lyrics. I mean, and I know that for you, that's something you definitely wanted to capture, I'm sure. I can't imagine being in that woman's situation, knowing that was going to be her last night, but God intervened.
Totally.
And
stepped in.
And for you, that has to be a humbling experience to know that you were a part of that in some way.
It's always overwhelming to me because I did nothing for my gift, right? I mean, it's God-given anyway. But it's just a reminder that when you choose to give whatever it is he's given you back to him, it's just amazing what he can do. And, you know, for me, it came way back. And after record company going out of business, then another record company going out of business, but just saying, okay, but I'm going to be faithful to what I know God asked me to do. Even though this seems a little bit impossible, he just asks for obedience, even when you don't have the details. And then I look at stories like that and I go, okay, yeah, he's worked it out.
There's nothing too dirty that you can't make worthy. You wash me in mercy. I am clean, oh yeah. There's nothing too dirty that you can't make worthy. You wash me in mercy. I am clean.
Now, I just hear you're going on tour with Danny Gokey. How is this going to work? Like, one of you guys is probably going to try to outsing the other every night because Danny's a powerhouse too.
He is a powerhouse. I'm really excited. We're doing actually the B1 tour, and I'm really honored that he said yes to come along. Hopefully we'll just sing together a bunch.
Yeah.
So we can maybe like not step on each other's toes. Now, we've toured together before, and it actually, I feel like we're a really good fit. We like similar music and we sing similar kinds of music. Like we're like a male and female like vocal version of each other. And my husband produced his last record and is working on this new one. So we just know his family and love him. It's gonna be fun.
Do you have to call the church and say, hey, can you go ahead and put like an extra set of windows so you guys don't like break the glass when you sing?
Come on, that's awesome.
One last song that we're going to get to on this album is Everbeat. Is this the one that has your kids at the end of it?
It
You singing at the end? That's so
is.
adorable. I know you love this song too.
I do. You know, obviously, if people listen to modern worship music, they'll know this is not my song. I did not write it. It was written, it comes out of Bethel Music Group out of Redding, California. I'd really been just kind of talking to my kids about what it looks like to kind of just in any moment, just worship the Lord. And that you don't just have to do it in church, but you can do it in the car, you can do it at home, you can do it any moment. I remember in particular, we'd started listening to that Bethel CD and every song on it we loved, but my kids loved Everbe. And so they'd always ask me to play it over and over and over again. So I'd picked them up from school and all three of them were sitting across the back seat. And I was actually on my cell phone because it's not illegal to talk on your cell phone in your car in Tennessee. Let me just point that out. And I was on the phone and I was irritated by something and having some problem with somebody. And I was, blah, 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 blah. And I look in the rearview mirror and Everbe is playing in the car. And all three of my kids have their hands up and are worshiping and singing the song at the top of their lungs. And first of all, I burst into tears because I was like, oh my gosh, they've been listening to me and they're learning. But then I was convicted because his praise was on their lips and complaining and criticism was on my lips. And they actually taught me more in that moment than I feel like I had taught them. So I decided to actually record the song because it was so special to them, but such a teaching moment for me, not me teaching them, but them teaching me. So they sung on the end of it with me, and it's been so special. Every time they come on tour with me, if 1 or 3 or whatever, they always come out and sing.
Isn't it crazy how God does that? You just learn stuff from your kids when you're the one supposed to be the parent.
That's the thing. I noticed actually through the years of being a mom, actually children, if we'll just pay attention, they will teach us more than we could possibly teach them.
And it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my
Oh, one last thing, because I've made this mistake numerous times. How many times do you go to a show and get introduced as Amy Grant? Because I made the mistake earlier. Oh, yeah, I'm talking with Amy. No, I'm not.
No, I'm not.
I'm talking with Natalie Grant.
You know, what's amazing is that I have been called Amy Grant numerous times over the last 17 years. What's probably not as fun for her is that more than I've been called Amy Grant, I've been asked if Amy Grant is my mom.
Oh, no.
And I'm always like, no, we're really not that far off in age. But I think because she started so young and I started so late, people just think, oh, this is another Grant. They must be related. I'm like, no. She's awesome.
Well, Natalie Grant is the only Grant who's been on this show, and that's what matters. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
really
for
appreciate
having me.
this.
I'm honored. Thank you for playing the music, and thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for being here. You've been listening to the More Than the Music podcast, episode 12, featuring Natalie Grant. If you've enjoyed this episode, or any others, would you kindly give the show a 5-star rating and review inside iTunes? Your 5-star rating and review would be greatly appreciated. I'm Justin Paul. To connect with the show and even have a chance to win an autographed copy of B1 from Natalie Grant, which was featured in this episode, just go to wayfm.com/Justin.